I end up choosing the wrong one.
Okay. Yeah, what type of question is this?
Necessary? Less on the assumption.
Yeah, necessary assumption.
Yeah.
So what are we asking ourselves as we read each answer choice?
Does it have to be true?
Does it have to be true? And that have to be true for what?
The conclusion.
Yeah, does this have to be true for the conclusion to be true?
Yeah.
In other words, if what?
If it's not true, then the conclusion falls, the argument falls.
Yeah, like, if something really is necessary, then its absence would create serious problems for the conclusion. And the conclusion is the last sentence, right? To significantly improve the soil structure, farmers will need to abandon the use of chemical fertilizers. Why does it say that they need to abandon the use of chemical fertilizers?
Because the chemical fertilizers, something about them is messing up the soil.
Did they say that the chemical fertilizers are messing up the soil?
They're preventing the people from doing what makes the soil healthy, I guess.
What is
indirectly? The green manure.
The green, yeah, when you grow a green manure crop, then your field rejuvenates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't been doing this when they started using chemical fertilizers. Yeah. Does it say anywhere in the premises that using chemical fertilizers prevents you from growing a green manure crop?
It says they abandoned the practice.
Yeah, so when they started using chemical fertilizers, they stopped growing green manure crops. But if you said to a farmer, hey, you need those green manure crops, would they have to stop using chemical fertilizers to start doing that again?
No.
Not necessarily. I mean, at least not based on what we know, right?
Yeah.
So the conclusion, when it says, so, to significantly improve the soil structure, farmers will need to abandon the use of chemical fertilizers. We have to ask ourselves, do they really need to, or can they just grow the green manure crops and continue using the fertilizers? So if you're going to draw this conclusion, if you're going to say something as strong as they need to get rid of chemical fertilizers, this argument must be assuming that that's somehow preventing them from doing the green manure crops.
So that would make E right, but then wouldn't it be possible for all but one to grow green crops even if they don't abandon the chemical? Because it says many, if not all. Doesn't many just mean one or more? At least one?
Oh, no, yeah, many just means at least one, but a necessary assumption can be weaker than what you need to prove the conclusion. So that can be confusing. What you need to prove the conclusion is not the same as what is sufficient to prove.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah, that's just what, okay, that makes sense. That one just seemed like it wasn't even saying what you said needed to be said.
Answer is E.
Yeah, I mean, I understand how you need something that explains why the chemical fertilizer is stopping them from doing that.
Yeah.
But if it's only many farmers in the region won't grow it, then the rest of them could. And one could not.
That's absolutely right. But see, here's the thing. What you're doing is you're applying the sufficient assumption test. You're saying this answer choice isn't good enough to prove the conclusion. And we're like, yeah, that's true. If only many will refuse, then the others still could. And thus the conclusion doesn't have to be true. But we do need it to be true that at least some of them will refuse. Otherwise, the conclusion has no chance at all of being valid.
Okay.
Now, what was the other answer you were debating?
A.
A. Most, if not all,
under
farmers.
Time pressure, I was like, these say the same thing, or similar.
Well, so that's interesting because we still need to assume most, because the conclusion was actually just about farmers in general, right?
Yeah.
Farmers will need to abandon. That almost sounds like all farmers. So A, most if not all farmers in the region who abandon the use of chemical fertilizers would periodically grow alfalfa. Do we need to assume?
I also, it's the easiest reason for me to rule that out after watching is it says such as alfalfa, so we don't need them. I know there's a more baseline
that's the
logic
easiest
reason why, but that one I was like, oh duh.
Yeah.
The other one I was like,
they don't have to do alfalfa, right? They could do something else. But do you know the more fundamental reason that is wrong?
It made sense when I watched the video, but I couldn't recreate it all.
So this is, again, a necessary sufficient
Okay.
issue. So we don't have to assume that if they abandon the fertilizers, they will grow a green manure crop. We
just
have
have
to
to assume that if they don't, they won't.
Yes. If they don't abandon, they won't. That's different than assuming that if they do, they will.
Okay.
False contrapositive.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. Nothing like green manure.
Yeah.
That's what this question should be called. Green manure question. Any other questions on these answers? B, C, D? Yeah, Ian.
Can you say the negation of answer choice D?
Yeah. So what's your guess?
So I assume it would just be the negate who will not to will. But there's
Yeah,
less-
if you have a
there's-
quantity, then you want to negate that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what? Okay. So what is it then?
Okay, so here the quantity is many.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying many farmers in the region will not grow green manure crops unless they abandon the use of chemical fertilizers. So if we say many, not many, well, I mean, I think it might be easier just to think of many as at least one. So, I mean, technically that's some and many are a little different from each other. But let's just do it with some first. So say some, if not all farmers in the region will not grow green manure crops. So if we change that to some, we say, okay, some just means at least one. At least one will not grow unless they abandon the use of chemical fertilizers. What's the negation of at least one will not grow?
Is that just saying at least one will grow?
No, so the at least one becomes none.
Because some becomes strong by saying none.
Yes.
Okay.
If I say some of you like ice cream, the negation is that, oh, sorry, none of you like ice cream. And so if none of them will not grow green manure crops unless they abandon the use of chemical fertilizers, now I'm getting it twisted around. Farmers will need to abandon the use of chemical fertilizers. None of the farmers in the region will not grow green manure crops unless they abandon the use of chemical fertilizers. That actually sounds good. Why am I confused here? None of the farmers in the region. That almost seems to prove the conclusion. That is not good. What is going on here? So that's the negation, but let's let's try to make sense of it the other way, and then see if I can figure out what the heck is going on with the negation. We have to assume that if you're going to draw the conclusion that they need to get rid of the chemical fertilizers,
Yeah.
you're assuming that it's an impediment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're assuming that many will not grow unless they abandon the use.
Yeah.
But if none will not, oh, no, the negation makes sense. I was just getting twisted around in my head. If none of them will not grow it, then what does that mean?
They will?
They will.
Okay.
If none of them will not, it's just a double negative.
The double negative.
Yeah, so
'Cause I got E and I was not happy with E. So I tried to do the negation and then that just screwed up even more. So I just said,
Yeah, so-
I did D.
here's the thing about the negation test, right? You can either ask yourself directly, does this have to be assumed? Or you can negate it and ask, if this is not true, will it destroy the conclusion, right? The thing about it is that some answer choices lend themselves to one question and others lend themselves to the other question. Like if it's already got a double negative or even just one negative, then negating it can make it easier.
Okay.
But here you have a many, if not all, you're actually turning it into a double negative,
Yeah.
right? And so now it's like, wait, what is that saying? And that's, even right now, I was like getting all mixed up. But if none of them will not grow, then that means all of them will. And so
Alright.
then we don't.
Unless they, all of them will grow it unless they abandon, what?
Yeah, all of them will grow unless they abandon
I
the
don't
use.
even understand.
Okay, so this negation is messing with our minds,
Yeah.
but if we say that all of them will grow unless they abandon, that unless means if not, right?
Uh-huh.
So if they don't abandon, then they will all grow.
Oh yeah, that would be bad for the conclusion.
Yeah. That would say not abandoning it is a good thing because now they'll go grow their green manure crops. Sound good?
Yeah, it's just one of the cases where I wasn't happy with one way, so I tried to verify with the second way.
Way.
And it just went,
And
it
then
just got
you
worse.
weren't happy with that either. Yeah, so then you're like, okay. Yeah. I think it's actually a good illustration of why it's actually good to know both techniques because one may like speak to you faster than the other. And that's some of the times I'm like, does that have to be true? And then I negate it, and I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, that's a huge problem. Other times you negate it and like things get worse. Here's one where it gets worse. All right. Any other questions on this one? Okay.